Welcome back. It's been a turbulent month in the airline industry with the collapse of Thomas Cook and industrial strife at both Ryanair and British Airways. And with such uncertainty in the air, consumers can often find themselves at the mercy of airlines, whether that means getting stranded abroad or frantic last-minute rebooking to avoid disappointment.
So what can you do if a flight or holiday is abruptly cancelled? Well, here with all of the answers is our consumer champion, Siobhan Maguire.
All of the answers.
Good morning, Siobhan.
No pressure.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, we go to Thomas Cook first of all. I knew it was a huge travel brand. They ceased operating in Ireland in 2014. What I didn't realise is that they have 600,000 people currently abroad.
They do. 600,000 people tied into booked holidays. So they have closed. There were, at the beginning of the week, there were 150,000 people stranded abroad. 60,000 of them have now been brought home. But it just leaves the whole thing up in the air for people who had been enjoying a lovely holiday. The shocking thing about this is that Thomas Cook are like the mammies and daddies of the travel agency industry. They are an institution. They're the longest running in the world. They have resorts, airlines, hotels. They cater for something like 19 million travellers every single year in 16 countries, and in 2019 had a revenue of 8.9 billion sterling. So how the hell this has happened is anyone's guess. They're putting it down to mounting debts, but it comes as a shock to employees and holidaymakers.
9,000 people lost their jobs.
9,000 lost their jobs. They are going to take legal action. I heard on the news last night.
Although I did hear during the week that a lot of carriers are offering those people jobs to come to them.
Yeah.
A portion of them, but still it's a huge amount of people who are out of work
I know
overnight.
it was a huge shock, because if Thomas Cook can be vulnerable, it basically, puts others into the spotlight.
And there's obviously a knock-on effect then to smaller operators, etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's look at your rights when it comes to encountering problems like this, and we'll start with if a flight is delayed.
So if a flight is delayed, it's very simple to remember your rights in relation to this, because sometimes it can seem quite convoluted. If a short-haul flight is delayed by 2 hours, you are entitled to care and assistance from the airport. If it's 3 hours for a European flight or 4 hours for a long-haul flight, you're also entitled to care and assistance. If it goes over 5 hours, then you are entitled to compensation. And the way to get your compensation is through an airline or to apply through the Commission for Aviation Regulation. And you're entitled from anything to anything from €250 up to €600.
And what does care and assistance consist of? A lunch voucher or...?
Essentially, yes. So meals, if the flight's being delayed overnight, you're entitled to hotel accommodation, to travel to and from the hotel as well. So basically, they have a duty of care to you. And my taxi driver this morning was saying to me that they were flying to Mallorca in August, and their flight was cancelled by 26 hours. Now, when they got to the airport and were told this would happen, they were given the option of staying in a hotel overnight, or they were given the option of, going home and coming back, and they would pay for the taxis. And they were also handed forms when they were boarding 26 hours later, with all the details in relation to their consumer rights and how to actually apply for compensation. So that's an excellent way to do things, because they do have a duty of care to people, and they do have to keep you informed.
And those guidelines in terms of the 2-hour wait or the 4-hour wait, does that apply to all airlines,
Absolutely,
Siobhan?
yes, completely.
Okay, across the board?
Yeah.
OK, let's talk about cancellations.
So if a flight is cancelled on you, there are 2 things that can happen. You can be rerouted or you can be refunded. It's as simple as that. There's nothing else up for grabs unless you want to take another flight at a later time. But that's the options: start and finish, reroute or refund.
No form of compensation at all, just in case?
Well, this is where travel insurance comes in really, really handy. So there is a clause within travel insurance called travel disruption. It's essential you make sure that you're covered for this, because if anything happens your flights, you're entitled to up to €1,000 of compensation. That's per person. That can relate to additional costs for accommodation or for flights. Now, there is a caveat here that if you know you're flying and there's something like, you know, on-off strikes, for example, which we have at the moment with BA, and we had Ryanair call-off strikes last week. And so you think, well, I'm going to add this travel disruption because my flight is most definitely going to be disrupted. It won't apply if you're travelling within 7 days of taking it, and it can be added retrospectively to all cover.
What happens to these rights in terms of cancellations and earlier on delays if you've missed a connecting flight? If your flight, say you're flying from Dublin to London and then London to Hong Kong or LA, if because of the 2 or 3 hour delay in Dublin you've missed that connecting flight, is that flight covered as well?
It is indeed. If it's a linked flight, yeah, it has to be, and they have to get you on to the next available flight. So you will, while you're being redirected maybe to a flight at an even later time, you will get to your destination eventually. But that's when the compensation kicks in. And just on that point, missed departure is an excellent thing to have in your travel insurance, because you don't know if you're going to the airport and your car breaks down or you're stuck in traffic. That particular thing will protect you and allow you to claim back.
Finally, and we're almost out of time, what about this whole overbooking thing? If you've been overbooked, where do you stand then?
So if you've been overbooked, the problem lies with the airline, not you. So they have to make sure that they have made reasonable efforts to seek volunteers who will say, you know what, you're overbooked, I'll wait for the next flight. They can't say to you, like what happened to that guy in the United
you have to get off the flight.
Yeah, you must get off the flight. That doesn't apply. But also, I always kind of hope for a flight that I'm on to be overbooked if I'm not in a hurry, because by taking the option of going on the next flight, you also get a little bit of cash compensation.
I remember doing that before, giving up a flight and you
I just think it's fascinating that airlines work on that basis. I'm still fascinated at that culture that they do that, you know. It's amazing.
Sage advice. Thank you very much, Siobhan. Good to see you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Now, our very own consumer champion, Siobhan, has been going to bat for our viewers who've had terrible consumer experiences. So if you have any consumer queries, drop us a line to weekendam@virginmedia.ie and we'll ask Siobhan to give you a dig out.